Welcome back everyone to the War Zone. I'm Scruffy and this is Scruffy Tales. And in this video we will talk about the very annoying fact that Russia is dictating terms along the entire front line down in Ukraine. And it will devolve, I guess, into an armchair general extravaganza. But bear with me, I think it will make sense in the end nonetheless. So at the moment, Russia is attacking all over the place, all along the front line. They're attacking down in Kherson, trying to push back against Ukrainian positions. They're attacking in the Zaporizhia region. They're attacking areas that Ukraine liberated last summer. They're attacking at Ocheretune, at Chasiv Yar. They're striking towards Siversk. They're attacking up in Kupiansk, and as we know, they're making a move north of Kharkiv and potentially even at Sumy. They are all over the place, everywhere at once. And people are asking, what the hell is going on? What are they doing? Is there any sense to all of this? Is there a logic to all of this? Right? Because why are they spreading themselves out thin? But that's the thing. Do they spread themselves thin? Because what if they actually have pockets of where forces are concentrated and they are just spreading thin in a few particular places to allow them to force Ukraine to allocate troops and manpower all over the place, right? Yeah, bear with me. We'll take a look at it. So let's take Chasiv Yar, a very defendable position. You have these two culverts that goes underground that Russia wants to be able to avoid the canal, and there are a couple of bridges and stuff like that. So very, very defendable from the Ukrainian point of view. So what if this was the only battlefield? You didn't fight anywhere else in Ukraine. Everyone just went straight for Chasiv Yar. Well, if the Ukrainians put 50,000 troops into Chasiv Yar, Russia would need 500,000 troops to attack and win, using the usual statistics that in an urban environment you need a 10-to-1 advantage. But if Ukraine has 200,000 troops, how do you prevent them from holding a point like Chasiv Yar indefinitely? Right? There's a reason why the Greeks defeated the Persians at Marathon and why they held it for as long as they did at Thermopylae, right? There's a reason, because at Marathon the Persians couldn't outflank the Greeks, and at Thermopylae the only reason the Persians won in the end was the fact that they managed to move around the defensive position. So, I mean, if you have the Ukrainians here holding Chasiv Yar and the Russians are just marching in a straight line, whoop, 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 whoop. I mean, it's a given. There's no way that the Russians will be able to defeat all the Ukrainians if they're holding this narrow point without trying anything besides just marching straight up and into the kill box, right? So what you naturally do is, spread out, try and move around and force the enemy to spread out as well. So that gives you options to try and outmaneuver them, find a hole in the defenses, and maybe find a battlefield that suits you, that actually allows you to have the initiative and fight the enemy and overcome and outflank this defendable position by moving in up here, or stuff like that. You get my point. And even more so, as is the case here, where we have more Russians than we have Ukrainians, and we have more Russian vehicles, more Russian artillery, more Russian everything than we have on the Ukrainian side, right? So why bunch everything together and march in a straight line against this one point, like the Persians had to do at Marathon and like they had to do at Thermopylae, when you can spread out and thin out the enemy and still have this numerical advantage all along the front line, right? It makes perfect sense. So as we move on, we're going to use these figures, or what do you call icons? Sorry, icons, to represent the manpower and reserves and logistics, right? Just to simplify things, right? So same number of icons, but now we, as the Russians, we have moved some of our icons up here, right? So even if we now have troops up here, we still have, as you can see, an advantage down along the main front line, and you can still hold the far end of the front as well. But we are now threatening the Ukrainians from the north while still having numerical advantage along the main front. And as Ukrainians, you need to counter this, and your numbers are finite. Your resources, you don't have an endless amount of resources, right? But you still have to counter this. You have to allocate troops, manpower, resources to counter the presence of the Russians up here. And we're representing this by moving Ukrainian icons, the stars, away from the main fight, right? So these stars may have well been back here and some reserves. It still represents troops, manpower, resources being allocated away from the main fight, right? And this means that Russia has an even greater advantage along the main front line. That obviously gives them a chance to push in hard and exploit this advantage. Especially even more so if they make a move on Sumy, then Ukraine needs to allocate even more troops to the northern front, right? And I mean, Russia has more troops, more vehicles, more artillery, more air power, and in places the Russian artillery advantage is between 5 to 10 versus 1 for the Ukrainians. So I mean, if Ukraine has to allocate resources, manpower, and artillery up here, it will open up sections of the front line to Russian assaults. It will allow Russia to push in hard at certain locations, positions that will give them an advantage and potentially a breakthrough, because they still have more of everything down here than Ukraine has, despite having moved parts of their forces up here, right? So they have now forced Ukraine to move important resources away from this front line way up here, which will allow the remaining Russians to push in and potentially break through at certain locations. And yeah, so Russia is dictating the terms of this war at the moment, and Ukraine is on the back foot, reacting and not acting. Russia is attacking where Russia wants to attack, when Russia wants to attack. And Ukraine, they have to fight on Russian terms. Ukraine is not fighting where Ukraine wants to fight, not sending troops and resources to locations where Ukraine wants those troops and resources. Obviously, this increases Russia's chances of achieving success somewhere along the front, even if Ukraine is defending well, like Chasiv Yar, or along this section of the front line here. Even if they are defending well, it is still only a matter of time before Russia achieves and secures a crucial objective, like at Okcheretune and Robotune, right? It's just a matter of time. The longer Ukraine has to defend, has to react, has to adapt to Russian maneuvers, have to wait for Russia to attack before they make a move, the longer that is the situation, the greater the chance that Russia will have another Okcheretune, another Robotune. Maybe they will break through at Kupiansk. Maybe they will take Chasiv Yar. Maybe they will encircle and capture Siversk, right? It's only a matter of time. When you are reacting, you are essentially slowly losing, right? And yes, they may hold the entire year until 2025, but during all of 2024, that just increases the chances for Russia to have a crucial breakthrough somewhere that Ukraine cannot handle. And maybe they will lose all territory up onto the Oskil River, for instance. A major setback if that happens. So being on the back foot, reacting and not acting, that is not where Ukraine wants to be. And right now, Russia is dictating everything along the front line. Everything that is happening because Russia wants that to happen. So how can Ukraine turn all of this around? Because they need to turn it around. Because right now, Russia is moving towards a point where they are actually winning the war, and Ukraine is just not holding the lines. They will be falling back because at some point Russia will break through and force Ukraine to make strategic retreats instead of tactical retreats. And Ukraine needs to go on the offensive, and they need to open a new front. So the question is where? Where can Ukraine go on the offensive? If Russia is up here and they have numerical superiority here with everything, manpower, vehicles, you name it, where can Ukraine push in? Well, kind of, this is where I'm leaning towards. If they do not remove troops from down here, if they do not allocate troops from Kherson all the way to Kharkiv, and they are still down here, Ukraine is in a good spot to attack, seeing as Russia has allocated so much manpower up here. Russia is vulnerable down here. And it is a bit interesting that we have for a month or two seen a lot of Ukrainian strikes aimed towards not only south of Kherson and into occupied territory, but aimed at Crimea. I mean, we have strikes against air bases, against SAM sites, radar installations, the Russian Black Sea Fleet and what have you, and Kerch Bridge, obviously. Not of late, but last year and stuff like that. So Ukraine has allocated a lot of drones and bombs and missiles at targets south of Kherson and within Crimea, right? So, and why? This is not a place where we expect Ukraine to launch an assault with vehicles, tanks, and what have you. Yet, Ukraine is making this continuous effort to strike at all these strategic targets all over Kherson Oblast over here and all over Crimea. And for what? Why? Why are they essentially wasting all of these missiles, all of this artillery, all of these drones into this region where, you know, there's a big river in the way. They can't move in troops. Why aren't they using all of these assets up at Kharkiv or at Chasiv Yar? Why are they attacking here with all of these missiles, all of these drones, and all of these airstrikes? Because this, I'm thinking Ukraine wants to push across the Dnipro and launch an assault towards occupied territory south of Kherson. Because if this happens, Russia will move a lot of troops and resources down here to prevent this from happening and to prevent Ukraine from pushing out and reaching Crimea. And if Russia does this, things become a lot easier along the entire front line, right? life will be so much easier for Ukraine along the entire front line if Russia goes apeshit loco full defense mode trying to hold Crimea and prevent Ukraine from pushing out from Kherson towards Crimea. And not only that, you see, once Ukraine gets F-16s or maybe even Swedish Gripen, they would be capable of reaching out and attacking targets in this area, right? If they're operating up here, they run the risk of getting shot at by Russian SAMs and Russian missiles and Russian aircraft. Not so much if they're operating down here. It's still a threat. The threat is still real, obviously, from Crimea and other occupied regions, but way less than if they're up here close to Russia itself. So down here, Ukrainian aircraft will be much more readily available to support the ground units striking at Russian targets, right? And Ukraine has already begun attacking SAM sites and airfields all over the place here, making it even easier for the Ukrainian jets to fly in and drop bombs and missiles and then get the fuck out of Dodge before missiles over here lock on and fire at them. So the stage is set essentially for F-16s supporting a ground war south of Kherson. So let's take a look at a couple of potential locations where Ukraine may launch a counterattack to reclaim the initiative and force Russia to react to Ukrainian actions. So first off, we have Kupiansk, Svatove, Crimea front line. I don't think it's very likely that this will be the location for a big Ukrainian counterattack. It's too close to Russia, and Russia could probably aim a lot of resources at this location to halt the attack. And also a lot of Russian artillery and missile sites and air power would be located within Russia, far away from where Ukraine could effectively counter those forces. And Russia would be able to send in reinforcements from Russia and from occupied territories to counter this push. So I don't think this is a likely location. And then you have Avdiivka or a similar location, say the territory north of Kharkiv, for instance. Here, Ukraine would reclaim lost territory, but would not threaten Russia's hold on occupied territories. If you catch what I'm talking about, the differences between reclaiming lost territory and occupied territories, right? They would push into territory recently lost, but it would not threaten the Surovikin line, and it would not threaten to liberate occupied territories. So Ukraine would spend a lot of time and effort, manpower, resources in taking back lost territory, but it would not have an effect on threatening the Surovikin line and allow Ukraine to push on to liberate occupied territories. Then you have the Zaporizhia front, where we saw the big Ukrainian push in 2023. And here, unless Ukraine is attacking Verbove, Ukraine has 2 or 3 months of hard fighting through the minefields all over again, right? And they made it up to the town of Verbove, and if they attack anywhere else, they have to go through all of those minefields all over again, getting shot at by artillery and anti-tank missiles and what have you in the process. So, unless they're going straight at Verbove, well, it's going to be a repeat of 2023. The problem is, by now, Verbove is surely fortified to hell and back. And also, Ukraine recently lost the town of Robotyne. And Robotyne is located right on top of high ground overlooking the low ground leading up to Verbove. So if Ukraine wants to attack Verbove, they need to control the Robotyne because that means they control the high ground that defends the flank of the assaulting forces heading towards the town of Verbove. So the Zaporizhia front, Ukraine will probably not want to go through all the mines again, spending 2-3 months doing that. And if they want to attack Verbove, they have to first attack Robotyne, take Robotyne, and then launch an assault against this by now heavily fortified town of Verbove. It's not unlikely because if they want to break through somewhere, this is the spot at Verbove, because at Verbove, Ukraine has pushed up right to the Surovikin line, and they will be able to begin fighting through the Surovikin line from day one instead of going through all the minefields for 2 or 3 months. So it's not unlikely that this will happen, but I don't think this will happen without Ukraine crossing the Dnipro. And crossing the Dnipro is important. It is crucial. I think it is very likely because it is a strike directly at occupied territory, not just reclaiming lost territory. It will be an attack against occupied territory, liberating occupied Ukraine. And down here at Kherson, along the Dnipro, Russia has few troops. They have very few defensive positions, and Russian support cannot hide within Russia proper to avoid strikes. And it also threatens Crimea, which would concern Russia greatly. So Ukraine has aimed a massive effort already towards striking targets south of Kherson with artillery, drones, missiles, and airstrikes. They keep hitting anti-air batteries, airfields, radar installations, and the Russian fleet. Ukraine will receive a large number of boats and assault craft from Sweden, Finland, the UK, the Netherlands, Australia, and the US, and we already know that it will be at least 115 boats. And that does not include the boats from Finland, Australia, and the US. So at the end, we may be looking at maybe 200, 250 boats and various assault craft. And Ukraine will soon, hopefully, be flying F-16 fighters that could potentially be used against targets in the south where Russian positions and forces are vulnerable. And Ukraine needs to take the initiative and act instead of reacting. And south of Kherson, Russia does not have as many troops or as impressive defensive positions. And it would put Ukrainian troops right next to Crimea. And just taking a quick look at how the F-16s could affect southern Kherson front line. Obviously, SAM sites would be the big threat. If you're coming in like this with an F-16 and you're dropping your munitions and they fly off over here and hit targets here supporting the ground units. SAM sites all over Crimea and obviously up here as well on the mainland would be trouble. As you can see, they have quite a bit of range and they could target, well, if they're located over here, they can target the F-16s quite early on. But still, you can move in and launch your bombs. And if the drones and everything else has done the job properly, you could push back Russian SAM sites and make it easier for the F-16s to move in and launch bombs. But what about the Russian Air Force? Well, they need to get damn close to Ukrainian positions if they want to engage F-16s that are dropping bombs on a potential front line here, right? they need to get so damn close that they are in turn in range of Ukrainian SAM sites located all over this area here. So if Ukraine moves in SAM sites, like Patriot and what have you, maybe not Patriot, but various SAMs, if the Russian Air Force moves in to attack F-16s, they become very juicy targets for the Ukrainians. And they are not operating above Russian airspace. They are operating in the war zone. They are prime targets for everything the Ukrainians can throw at them. Same thing goes for SAM sites. They can't hide in Russia where the West says you can't attack them. They will be fair game all over the area here when the F-16s comes in, drops the munitions, and turns around and flies away. So if Russia wants to send in fighter jets after these F-16s, Russia will lose quite a few of their fighter jets, no doubt about it. So it will be the SAM sites that are very dangerous for the F-16s. I'm not that worried about the Russian Air Force, to be honest. Not down here in the south, further north. Yes, the Air Force will be a problem, but not down here. Down here is the perfect area for Ukrainian F-16s to operate, because the Russian Air Force will be almost nullified by Ukrainian surface-to-air missiles. And the problem then will be Russian surface-to-air missiles, and Ukraine needs to work hard to take them out in order to be able to send in F-16s. And it appears as if Ukraine is currently working on dealing with this issue here, Russian surface-to-air missiles. That's it. That's the end of the video. I hope you found it interesting. And yes, Russia is at the moment dictating terms along the entire front line. Ukraine is reacting to Russian actions. Russia is attacking and fighting where they want to fight. They're moving where they want to move. God damn it. Need to drink water. And Ukraine is stuck with trying to adjust to what Russia is doing, which is a problem in the long run. So that is why Ukraine needs to turn this around as quickly as possible and make Russia react to Ukrainian actions instead, because that is the only way they can win this fight. And if they are in a bad position right now, that they are unable to take the fight to Russia, Russia may be able to just continue applying pressure, opening new front lines in the north, and applying more pressure in the south, forcing Ukraine to allocate resources that they would rather build up for a potential counteroffensive in 2025. Maybe they have to waste that collected stockpile of ammunition and vehicles to counter these small Russian incursions all along the northern border. Who knows? So Ukraine needs to do something to break this cycle of Russia having control of the initiative. They need to do something to redirect the flow of this war, so to speak. Anyway, that's it. I hope you found it interesting, like I said. And as always, go på marsch, Ukraine. Give them hell.